And now that brings us to tonight's keynote address. Comes from one of the most exciting members of Congress who is redefining the Republican Party. He was first elected in a hotly contested special election in 2019. Representative Dan Bishop has been a distinct voice in Congress for the people of his home state of North Carolina. Over the last 3 years, Representative Bishop has seen firsthand from his assignment on the House Judiciary and Homeland Security Committees the dangers of both unchecked federal bureaucratic action and partisan groupthink. Representative Bishop has brought to the nation's capital the courage that he displayed first in the North Carolina State House on a multitude of issues. This shouldn't be a surprise. As you may know, in the North Carolina State House, he was the architect of that state's efforts to protect children from radical gender ideology. And in Congress, he's been a strong voice challenging the bipartisan foreign policy consensus. He's one of just 49 Republicans to vote for the repeal of the Iraq War AUMF. And in 2021, he was one of 19 Republicans to oppose the 2022 National Defense Authorization Act. Earlier this year, Representative Bishop was one of the first congressmen to take a principled stand against Congress's war-fevered, blank check approach to the war in Ukraine. Just last week, Representative Bishop won a decisive re-election to represent the citizens of North Carolina's 8th Congressional District and is now set to become a leading voice defining the future of conservatism. Please join me in welcoming Representative Dan Bishop.
Thank you, Emil. Joe and I are so happy to be with you guys tonight, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to address you on the occasion of the American Conservatives' 20th anniversary gala. I'm a great admirer. Your website, it's one of the things you think about certain websites that you go to a lot, and the appearance of it is just like going home to pick up some new inspiration. Matt, we see lots of days. Matt Gates over from Florida over here, ladies and gentlemen. Give him a round of applause. Matt's been in the House longer than I have, and he well knows that there are many days on which we need some inspiration, right, Mark Meadows? We need a little bit of buck me up because it is an institution that has its share of challenges, Senator Webb. And so I'm grateful for the intellectual energy and the creativity that helps to sustain and propel the work of conservatives like me in Congress, as well as the work of building and reinvigorating the conservative movement across the country. And by that I mean a certain type of conservative. And all you folks are in this room very sophisticated. You've learned these things long, long ago. I was sort of a late arrival to the idea. I guess you guys are what American conservative you would call maybe a paleo-conservative. But thanks to the lingo of Donald Trump in our political lexicon, I think if you borrowed from Phil Gramm, you'd say that you were America first before America first was cool. So tonight we're finally seeing most of the ballots counted from the midterm election we had 9 days ago. And if I might, I'd like to take a few minutes to anticipate with you the prospects for America First governance in the 118th Congress. Republicans appear to have won the House with a narrow margin, approximately 5-seat majority, and of course we've lost the Senate. It was not the red wave that many of us hoped for, that many predicted, but I really honestly awoke the morning after that election with this firm sense. I don't know that I hear from the Almighty in my ear, but I just had this sense that He was telling me, I have given you everything you need. Of course, assessments of the race began appearing immediately. Most reflected the prior commitments of the assessor. If you despise Donald Trump, then the disappointing outcome was because of Trump. I think, and it's interesting, and I got to tell you, it's pretty thrilling. It's pretty thrilling to be in this room with all of you guys. I feel the same way. I hang around Matt Gaetz. He's a superstar. Meadows, superstar. Senator Jim Webb. his son going to be a superstar? Already is, but he'll be in Congress sometime soon, ladies and gentlemen. Chris Rufo, who I've been watching. And one of the first things that we did, I guess, is in early 2021, Chris, after you'd made such a splash, brought in President Trump with Russ Vought from the Office of Management and Budget, had adopted his executive order on critical race theory to get it out of federal agencies. Tremendous step forward, and we basically, I mean, there's no originality in Congress, right, Chris? We just took same executive order and put it in a bill, and we wanted to be part of moving forward this idea that we're going to move forward in courage and step out. But we were having a conversation at the table, and what Chris was saying about this election matches my assessment. I think, despite what else you may hear, that voters rewarded candidates of demonstrated conviction and authenticity, especially those with mature professional judgment and rhetoric. Consider my own state of North Carolina. House Freedom Caucus member and actual conservative Ted Budd is now the United States Senator-elect from North Carolina. And I know a lot of people were focused on races a lot of different places, but Ted's 3.5 percentage point win, now that sounds small until you think about what we see in North Carolina. That doubled Tom Tillis's margin in 2020, despite the conventional wisdom in favor of remaining malleable and playing 51-49 politics. And with very clear battle lines drawn in a generally pink state, Republicans also won all 5 appellate court seats, taking over our Supreme Court, won a supermajority in the state Senate, missed it by 1 in the state House, in the course of doing that, winning 10 Biden seats. More familiar to you, I'm sure, Brian Kemp, of course, sailed to victory in Georgia after he stood his ground and pioneered resistance to the lockdown regime. And the DeSantis juggernaut continued vastly to change the face of politics in Florida. Right, Matt? Conviction candidates, responsible rhetoric. But results like that coincided with underperformance of expectations in the United States Senate and House, even in the same places. Again, consider North Carolina. The U.S. House districts there were gerrymandered by a court. By contrast to the state legislative results I just described to you, we split with the Democrats exactly as designed for those districts, 7-7. Similar results happened across the country. And I suggest that while I think, did a great job of hammering the fact that there was 8% inflation, the fastest rise in grocery prices in 43 years, mortgage rates topping 7%, the worst stock market session in over 2 years, and rapidly growing signs of recession, something was missing. In my view, our senior-most leadership did not convince Americans that Republicans would damn well change the situation. We trotted out the gauzy commitment to America, but Americans saw it, Matt called it the palm card for America, but Americans saw it as poll-tested and lacking detail, and they weren't convinced. The conviction wasn't there. So where are we? What happens next? Well, I can tell you that the warnings are already going around the Republican conference. We've got to show we can govern. If we don't get our act together, if we're not unified, we'll turn the floor over to the Democrats. And in the blink of an eye, we'll be right back in the minority. Unified here sounds suspiciously like conservatives, keep your mouth shut and vote how we tell you. It's interesting, Jim. I thought as I sat down across from Senator Jim Webb, Democrat senator, and long associated with the American Conservative, I find it hard to conceive that a Democrat could be at home and a conservative could be at home in the Democratic Party today. I honestly do. But I will also tell you that as we talk about Ukraine and the neocons, it isn't so easy for an actual, genuine conservative in the Republican Party either. My chief of staff reminded me today of the words Shakespeare placed into the mouth of Julius Caesar. A coward dies 1,000 times before his death, but the valiant taste death but once. It seems to me most strange that men should fear seeing that death, a necessary end, will come when it will come. Perhaps it overreaches to use that quote here. We're talking only about the deaths of political careers after all, or perhaps a political party. But I do think the sentiment is apt. I've only been in Washington for 3 years. Seems like an eternity some days. But I'm continually amazed, really amazed at the limited supply of courage and the unlimited apparent willingness repeatedly to die cowardly deaths. What are some examples? Well, Emil, you referenced one. One is the messaging bill to codify same-sex marriage that both sitting Republican senators from my state are helping to usher through the lame duck Senate this week. The bill does nothing to alter the existing substantive law, which the Supreme Court has decreed for both same-sex and cross-racial marriage. It is instead a virtue-signaling vehicle for these Republicans to pander to people that hate them with a passion and at the same time kick the voters in the teeth for whom they just underperformed. And although the wise bipartisan working group now claims to have amended the language of the bill so that it doesn't mandate the possible federal recognition of polygamy, experts are now saying that the new language not only appears to fail to accomplish its task, but it also appears to legitimize marriages of children consummated outside of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, the pit of hell has no bottom, and when you seek to go social engineering in your effort to virtue signal, you might create a disaster. Here would be another cowardly death. We all know the drill by now. Despite our House majority, appropriations bills will stall in the Senate until a shutdown crisis looms at the end of September. Then members will be told their votes are needed for a grotesque omnibus so that the soldiers will be paid and the national parks will remain open. Or leadership will be forced to negotiate for votes from Democrats. What if we responded to this moment instead with courage? Chris Rufo understands what I'm talking about. Where did he come from? How did he become a rock star in such a short time? Well, he decided to speak truth to power. He displayed courage. It worked. He became the chief architect of what is, as he described, a nationwide fight against critical race theory and now the sexualization of young children. He stared the left in the eye and declared his willingness to engage in culture war. He has been utterly unafraid. Contrast that with the newly elected whip in the House majority who declared the other day that we need to keep divisive cultural issues off the floor. I propose that we try courage in the House of Representatives. So what would it look like? Thomas Massey of Kentucky proposed just yesterday that on January 4, the House pass, listen to this carefully, a one-year continuing resolution at 95% of current spending levels to take effect only if the appropriations bills aren't passed by September. Then hold out for genuinely good deals on those bills. You see, you take shutdown off the table and let Democrats choose between a hard negotiation and a 5% cut. Jim Jordan has emphasized that we have to identify the leverage points during the time available to us and fight over those in the first 9 months instead of drifting toward that inevitable omnibus. In other words, we need leadership to lead us in the right fights, not to lead us to 2 years of cowardly deaths. Courage will also require House committees to send subpoenas and to enforce them. I know Chairman Jim Jordan will do that, me and Matt, on Judiciary, where I serve with Republicans who are revved up and ready to go. Jamie Comer's ready to go on oversight and government reform. I hope we'll do it on Homeland Security. It is said that courage is a habit. We need to develop it. We need to see it. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing the leader announced some time ago that we're not going to give more blank checks to Ukraine. Picking up on Tucker Carlson's coverage just a night ago, I want to know who the unnamed senior intelligence official, U.S. intelligence official it was, who declared that Russian missiles had landed in Poland. That's dangerous stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Lots of unnamed officials in Washington. Courage begins, I think, with that small majority. That small majority that the Lord has given us. Everything I believe that we need. If conservatives can muster the courage, with God's help, we can compel it in the Republican conference. It may be that my more status quo colleagues are right. Maybe when we undertake this small majority with courage and the challenges that may entail, the American people will punish us. Maybe they will. If so, that political death, a necessary end, will come when it will come. But perhaps instead, the American people will hear the rally cry and think, at last, the turn begins. Let us restore our nation together. Thank you all. May God bless you, and pray for God to bless the United States of America.